Topping our headlines at this hour. Wednesday's local and parliamentary by-elections have ended with a decisive win for the ruling People Power Party, and President Yoon Suk-yeol has vowed to keep priority on the livelihoods of the people. And following its victory, the ruling People Power Party has pledged to work harder to address public needs, while the opposition Democratic Party of Korea has acknowledged its shortcomings and vowed a major reshuffle. Meanwhile, North Korea is poised to preside over the United Nations Conference on Disarmament for the next 4 weeks amid speculation about a 7th nuclear test by the regime in the near future. Hello, you're watching The Daily Report. It's Thursday afternoon, June 2nd, here in South Korea. I'm Min Sun-hee. We start on the local political front. It was a triumph and test of public sentiment for the People Power Party with regard to Wednesday's local and parliamentary by-elections. The ruling party won 12 of the 17 key races for city mayors and provincial governors. Our Kim Hyo-sun starts us off.
It was a landslide victory for the ruling People Power Party. The PPP won a total of 12 out of the 17 key races for big city mayors and provincial governors. This is in stark contrast to previous local elections held in 2018, during which the Democratic Party won a total of 14 key races. In the capital city of Seoul, incumbent Mayor Oh Se-hoon was re-elected. After winning nearly 60% of the votes, Oh claimed victory over Song Young-gil of the main opposition, Democratic Party of Korea.
I would like to thank all Seoul residents for their support. Thank you.
With the victory, he becomes the first mayor of Seoul to serve 4 times. And the win may serve as a cornerstone for him becoming a potential candidate for the next presidential election, as the Seoul mayoral post has long been considered a springboard for the presidency. The PPP also took the governorships of both Chungcheong-do provinces, both Gyeongsang-do provinces, and Gangwon-do province. They also clinched victory in the cities of Sejong and Daejeon, as well as the southeastern cities of Daegu, Ulsan, and Busan. In Daegu, the PPP's Hong Jun-pyo won nearly 79% of the votes, while Park Hyung-jun of PPP won with over 66% in Busan. The tightest race was seen in the Gyeonggi-do Province, where former Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon won with nearly 50% of the votes. The DP candidates won the key posts in only 5 regions: Gyeonggi-do Province, the 2 Jeollado provinces, Gwangju and Jeju. The 2 former presidential candidates, the DP's Lee Jae-myung and the PPP's An Chol-soo, have successfully made a political comeback through the by-elections held alongside Wednesday's local elections. Lee won 55% of the votes in the by-election for a parliamentary seat representing Gyeong B district in Incheon City. An, who ran for a parliamentary seat representing Bundang A district in Seongnam, won over 62% of the votes. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
The results of Wednesday's race for posts within the government and parliament are reflections of the public's calls for commitment to the economy and the people's livelihoods. So said President Yoon Suk-yeol, according to his spokesperson on this Thursday. The president also highlighted efforts to prop up the local economy as top priority, given the current hardships faced by ordinary people. To this end, he pledged the central government will work with their local counterparts to stabilize people's livelihoods. Back on the political front, it was a remarkable night for the People Power Party, given its decisive victory in both the local and parliamentary by-elections. My colleague Lee Kyung-eun has more on the ruling party's reaction to the results.
As soon as the exit poll results came out, the People Power Party officials stood up all together, holding hands, clapping and chanting, "Victory, victory." As largely expected, the exit poll results projected the PPP's landslide victory. The trend continued into the actual outcome. And for the party, it's dramatic redemption for 4 years ago when it barely won 2 seats. But most importantly, it scored a much-needed victory for what it calls a complete overturn of political dynamics that have been dominated by the Democratic Party.
We were put in charge of state affairs through the presidential election, and now we are given the role of being in charge of local administrations. We will dedicate ourselves to our roles as much as we cherish the opportunity.
And new conservative mayors and governors are likely to have stronger backing from their lower-level administrative leadership as the PPP now dominates more than the majority of some 200 local districts. That's especially welcoming news for the PPP's Oh Se-hoon, who's been re-elected as Seoul mayor. Policies had roadblocks due to the DP holding all local districts except for one. But now the PPP holds more than half of 25 districts in Seoul. With the landslide victory this time, the president and the PPP could now try to make changes at least at the local level, even when the DP continues to hold a solid majority at the National Assembly. However, the party failed to clinch its most desired governor post in Gyeonggi-do Province, where campaign efforts were concentrated. President Yoon's former spokesperson Kim Eun-hye lost by a slim margin. Kim accepted her defeat, saying she did her best but was not qualified enough. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Right, as my colleague Lee Kyung-eun has just said, the PPP's Kim Eun-hye lost by a very small margin to her opponent Kim Dong-yeon for the post of governor in Gyeonggi-do Province, the home ground of former presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung. My colleague Kim Do-yeon now has a bit on the silver lining of sorts for the opposition party.
The Democratic Party of Korea have avoided crisis right at the last minute. Its Gyeonggi-do gubernatorial candidate Kim Dong-yeon flipped the race with less than 5% of votes left to count to finish ahead of his opponent Kim Eun-hye of the People Power Party. The race for South Korea's most populous province of 1.3 million people was decided by just a few thousand votes. Gyeonggi-do is dubbed by some to be a miniature version of South Korea. It hosts the largest semiconductor plant in the world, as well as the country's own Silicon Valley. Upon accepting the win, Kim said, "I will focus on and devote everything to the financial situations and quality of life of Gyeonggi-do's citizens." He also acknowledged the unfavorable situation in terms of the election as a whole, saying, "We need reforms and changes to the DP. I think the Gyeonggi-do voters gave me the honor of planting the seeds of hope for this." This is a defeat overall for the party and failure in a second national election after it lost its control of the presidential office in March. The other four wins had always been expected as they were the liberal strongholds of Jeollabuk-do Province, Jeollanam-do Province, city of Gwangju, and Jeju Island. In the meantime, the party's former presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung made a successful comeback as he won a parliamentary by-election to replace Seoul mayoral candidate Song Young-gil. However, as a key figure in the party who took the role to oversee the election, Lee was not able to celebrate his personal win.
I promise to do my best to get the people's trust back and be loved again. We were not good enough. We'll reform and show a new side of us that meets people's expectations.
South Koreans again have delivered their verdict to the Democratic Party of Korea, which took 14 of the posts in the last local elections 4 years ago, handing them a huge blow this time around. Will the DP be able to bounce back in general elections in 2 years' time? That we'll have to wait and see, as it will depend entirely on how the party recollects itself from post-election defeat. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Many countries, including South Korea, may eventually face very low inflation and very low growth due to their rapidly aging societies. This is according to BOK Governor Lee Chang-yong on this Thursday during an international conference here in Seoul. He claimed once the current high inflation cools, there is a strong possibility of secular stagnation in advanced and emerging market economies, including South Korea, China and Thailand. He also cast doubt on conventional policies adopted by central banks to address challenges related to inflation. On the international front, eyebrows are being raised yet again as North Korea prepares to preside over a UN forum on nuclear disarmament amid widespread speculation about a nuclear test by the regime in the near future. Our Kim Da-mi has more.
The UN Conference on Nuclear Disarmament, chaired by North Korea, will kick off in Geneva on Wednesday amid growing concerns that the regime is on the verge of conducting a nuclear test. Founded in 1979, the Multilateral Forum for Disarmament and Negotiations discusses nuclear disarmament, bans on producing fissile material, and prevention of an arms race in outer space. 65 member states chair the UN conference in rotating 4-week intervals. China, Colombia, Cuba, North Korea, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Ecuador will take their turns this year, and Pyongyang has been leading the membership from Monday. Earlier this week, more than 40 non-governmental organizations, including the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea, called on UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and member states to boycott these sessions. If the U.S. were to boycott this conference, it wouldn't be the first time, according to Radio Free Asia. The U.S. ambassador to the conference left the room in a show of protest when Venezuela and Syria chaired the forum 3 and 4 years ago, respectively. The North led the conference in 2011, which at the time raised eyebrows among nuclear and security experts, as well as the United States. Then senior U.S. Congresswoman, Representative Eliana Ross-Lehtinen, called that decision in 2011, quote, a classic example of the fox guarding the henhouse. 김다미, Arirang News.
U.S. Special Envoy Song Kim is due in Seoul on Thursday for talks on North Korea with his South Korean and Japanese counterparts. According to the U.S. State Department Wednesday, the 3 envoys will address a wide range of issues related to North Korea, including its recent ICBM launches as well as its COVID-19 situation. The department says Kim's 3-day agenda here in South Korea seeks to address the close collaboration among Seoul, Washington and Tokyo in ensuring complete denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. The meeting will be the first face-to-face of its kind since South Korean envoy Kim Gon took office. In other news, the Biden administration is poised to dispatch advanced rocket systems to Ukraine and has made it clear that these weapons will not be deployed on strikes against Russian territory. The Pentagon said Wednesday the rocket systems are part of a new $700 million package of security aid to Kyiv. Included in the package is a high-mobility artillery rocket system capable of carrying 6 rockets and Javelin anti-tank weapon systems, as well as 15 tactical vehicles. According to a senior Defense Department official, it will take 3 weeks, that is, to train Ukrainian forces on using these new systems. Monkeypox has been making headlines that will be in recent times. And accordingly, in this next report, our Shin Yeon looks into this viral disease and its potential danger. Do take a look.
Could we see another pandemic this year? That's what the World Health Organization is trying to stop, as more and more countries are reporting monkeypox cases. What's monkeypox? Monkeypox is similar to smallpox. It was first found in monkeys kept for research in a lab in 1958. The first human case was recorded years later in 1970 in Congo. Since then, it has been considered an endemic disease concentrated in Central and Western African countries. But recently, it has spread to other parts of the world. Why? Just a few weeks ago, on May 13th, the UK notified the World Health Organization that it had found 3 cases of monkeypox. What startled scientists, though, is that none of them had visited Africa. They're still looking into how this could have happened. Meanwhile, this virus has spread across 30 countries, mostly in Europe. The WHO believes over 550 people have caught the virus so far. Has it spread to Korea? No. But South Korea's health authorities on Tuesday have placed monkeypox in the 2nd level of contagious diseases in their 4-tier scheme. Authorities are making sure this virus doesn't come into the country. The most probable route would be through air travel. They have also ensured that South Korea has a vaccine stockpile against monkeypox. It has enough vaccines to inoculate some 35 million people. How do you know if you have monkeypox? What are some main symptoms? Those infected develop blistery rashes over their body. Usually, these rashes go away after 3 weeks. Other common symptoms are high fevers and muscle aches. Fortunately, monkeypox is known to have a very low fatality rate. None of those recently infected have died. And how can you catch it? The answer is through close contact. You can catch monkeypox by touching the rashes, bodily fluids, and scabs of people or animals who have it. That's why it's important to self-isolate yourself if you're a monkeypox patient, because the virus can spread through clothing, bedding, and towels. And a common misconception is that monkeypox spreads mostly among gay men. Some cases in this outbreak have been identified among such communities. But the WHO says there's no scientific evidence that suggests that this is how the virus spreads. Shin Yeon, Arirang News.
And on that note, we end part 1 of the Daily Report. In part 2, we touch upon topics addressed during last week's World Health Assembly over in Geneva. See you in a bit.
Share South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean new day. A Korean survivor of Japan's wartime slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis and pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
So good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever.
Welcome back. In today's segment of Viewpoint, we touch upon the host of health-related issues worldwide, ranging from the pandemic to monkeypox to pediatric hepatitis. And for more on this, I have Professor Kim Eun-gyu from Yonsei University. Professor Kim, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I also have Professor Yu Byung-wook from Suncheon University. Professor Yu, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Good afternoon.
Right, Professor Kim, we'll start with you. Now, during his opening remarks at the 75th World Health Assembly, the head of the global health body claimed that the pandemic is not over anywhere until it's over everywhere. Now, remind me, but if my memory serves me correct, I remember these words were shared by you on our segment several times during the COVID-19 coverage. That being said, what more would you like to add to these words, and what are your thoughts on the world's COVID-19 situation as we speak?
During the pandemic, most of the continents went through 4 to 5 times of outbreak. And some countries like Africa are still remaining as a blind spot. And these countries usually have a limited data about COVID-19, and also they have a poor public health situations. As we all know, Beta variant and Omicron variant all came from Africa. So if there's no more variant occurring, I think COVID-19 pandemic might end like this domestically, but there's no guarantee. Additionally, there are economic crises coming, food crisis, and war can hit some middle or low-income countries. And these are all potential risk factors to cause a new variant. And herd immunity for COVID-19 might gradually weaken within 6 to 12 months. So these are the reasons still we have to be vigilant for new variant emerging.
Indeed, we do, of course. And Professor Yu, what is your assessment of South Korea's COVID-19 situation, and how do you respond to the possible lifting of quarantine for COVID-19 patients here in South Korea, maybe perhaps on June 20th?
Well, as you know, so many are watching the Arirang. So before we are already shocked at the kind of 600,000 people are the confirmed cases, but recently we don't care because we're not counting anymore. But you know what? Still, we have around the 15,000 confirmed cases in Korean peninsulas coming. But feeling is like we don't care anymore. But issue is, Korea now is only one strong regulation is isolation for COVID-19 confirmed cases. Since 23rd of the May, I expected all the policy can be withdrawing, but the health authority and the government decided 4 weeks extended till 20th of June. But I hopefully also will be stopped, the isolations. Because you know what? I believe we still have around at least 40,000 new cases daily. But we just are catching 15 around 1,000. Why? Because we not going to test anymore. Because we know how to handle it. Like used to, we respond like the seasonal influenza. So if you get cold, for feeling OVR, 2-3 days stayed at home, self-tested kids, and they stayed at home. Why? Because Omicron or the sub-variant is very mild for common cases. Also, a third of Korean people are infected. A third of Korean people are fully vaccinated. So a third, we don't know why, but they are safe. So which means now we have to start to saying, announce the endemic in Korea will be first. This is now Korea's situation, and I understand.
Right, I see. And Professor Kim, also during last week's World Health Assembly, there was talk about the importance of implementing a global pandemic treaty. Now, this, of course, also triggered quite a bit of conspiracy theories. But all that aside, and simply speaking, what kind of global response do you believe will ensure an effective fight against perhaps our next pandemic?
Well, the past now becomes a resource as we build the present and the future. And what we will experience tomorrow will be partially built on what we accomplished today. So let us go back to history. I recently found an article about Russian flu that occurred in 1889 and continued for 2 years. So it's not well known as Spanish flu, but when you look at the symptoms of Russian flu, it is almost identical with COVID-19, usually affecting elderly with underlying conditions, and young and children are spared, and they can spread before symptom onsets. They have some kind of long symptoms like long COVID, and everything is so similar. But at that time, humans didn't know about virus, so we don't have any information what kind of pathogen it was. And Russian flu ended without help from organizations like WHO. There was no organization like that at the time, but with a huge price. So now there's no way any country can deal with pandemic alone. So globally, we need an organizations like WHO, and we have to go through a long and painstaking discussion to find a common ground. I think WHO is facing a situation like this. WHO should improve as we learn from the past and this recent pandemic, and should not be biased by some non-medical factors, big powers and other political issues. I think it was a little bit delayed to declare pandemic in early 2020, and this kind of mistake should not happen again.
Right, of course not. Professor Yoon, also during this Global Health Assembly, there was strong consensus about the need to better protect our healthcare workers. Now, the pandemic, of course, has brought to light the plight of our own healthcare workers here in the country. What can you tell us about the current efforts being made, perhaps, to address the difficulties faced by our healthcare workers?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, Korean government have the experience. It was 2015 with the MERS coronavirus crisis. After that, we preparing for the MERS vaccine, which means all the detail what happened from the beginning and closing. There are some faults of the government, some goods of the governments. So that helped to review about that, and then we can preparing to early stage of the 2019, late of December, we prepared perfectly against to the COVID-19, but except protection of healthcare workers. So yesterday the election is finished. You know what? There are many words before election. After elections, the all words just gone with the winds. But now we have to remark again, because the people president elections and now is the government election as well. They are promising one thing is specialized hospital for infection control, at least 4 for the Seoul Gyeonggi Province, in Jeonnam, and Gyeongsang, and the Chungcheong Province to the protected because like me, I'm family medicine physician. I'm just the infantry soldier. Infantry soldier means just common, but sometimes we need a UDT, special task forces, to preparing, and also it helps to suppress any kind of war. The same thing. So how to protect our healthcare workers? So in the meanwhile, I would like to say now, in a peace, have to prepare specialized hospital or institute for at least 4 in Korean Peninsula, and we teaching for special task force and like me, general practitioner. And we are learning in the livings, and then we do anytime it happens suddenly.
We need to be better prepared, obviously.
Yep.
Professor Kim, the Assembly also denounced Russia's attack on Ukraine's healthcare facilities. And indeed, of course, as you mentioned earlier, warfare does limit the public's access to healthcare itself. And is there a way to better address this really unfortunate reality, do you think?
First of all, most of Koreans and other country people don't know about the war. They never experienced it, but it's definitely a very unfortunate situation. And this kind of war crime happened in Syria also in 2011. They targeted hospitals, they targeted emergency medical services, even they used chemical weapons. And it results in a lot of casualties, and they're producing widows, orphanage, and results in poverty and malnutrition. And then we have a lot of infectious disease spreading around in the refugee camps. So it should not happen again. It should stop as soon as possible. I think Korean went exactly the same experience in Korean War about 70 years ago, and it's the best example who went through this misery and overcome it. So I think we can find many ways to help Ukraine. There's going to be a lot of need for help, human and material support from outside, and we should suppress war or any kind of conflict as much as we can. And global organizations should monitor and intervene and do some actions. I don't know how, but it's definitely their job to do.
Right, they really need to take greater action then.
Yeah.
Beyond the pandemic, Professor Yu, monkeypox, as my colleague Shin Ye-eun mentioned earlier, has been making headlines in recent days. Now, the World Health Organization claims that while the outbreak is not normal, it is containable. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is common in Africa. Fortunately, I have a chance being there and work with my dear African doctors. So, and let me say, Japanese encephalitis is the mosquito and the tick-borne, mosquito-borne disease. It's quite common and usual in Southeast Asia, sometimes in Korea, but not happen in Mombasa in Kenya. Not. If someone who had the Japanese encephalitis in Mombasa in Kenya, probably the headline. But in Philippines, not. Which means the monkeypox, our recognitions of the rare disease and orphan disease in endemic. But thank you for this media, we know it everywhere. So I believe that this monkeypox, we have to know what exactly it is. And the Arirang we showed before our show, how to the spreading, how to prevent it, that will be enough. Why? Big words make the new news make another big word. So let me say, this is monkeypox unfortunately is quite common. We can see some scar on their hands in the DR Congo and somewhere, but it's not common in Korea. That's why we are so afraid about it. So we have to know what exactly is spreading, close context. So we'd be afraid of someone who had a scar on hands. Sorry to say, I cannot shake hands with you. Just we can say, and a little bit of distance from them, so we don't worry about it.
Because prevention is better than cure.
Yeah, and also this is very new and rare cases. But like Zika, it happened was 2014 and 2016. But most people we already forgot what is the Zika virus exactly.
Right, we have moved on then. Professor Kim, what more can you tell us about vaccines and perhaps treatments for monkeypox then?
Well, there are big difference between COVID-19 and monkeypox. COVID-19 is totally new, but monkeypox, we really know many things about it. It got international attention in 1970 when human infection occurred in Congo, as Professor Yu mentioned. It's not a new global health issue, but I'm sorry to say that there is no specific drug for monkeypox. We can use the medications we have for smallpox, such as tecovirimat, but it's very expensive and we don't have it in Korea. There is another antiviral agent called cidofovir, which is medication for cytomegalovirus. It's very, very expensive. But anyway, if we need it, we can use it. And also there's a vaccinia immunoglobulin, which we can use intravenously. I think there's a stockpile in our country also. And there's another option using vaccine. There's no specific vaccine for monkeypox, but vaccine for smallpox can work out somehow. So we do have a first generation and second generation vaccine, as the previous news mentioned, in a huge amount as a strategic stockpile. But in 2019, a new vaccine was developed as a third generation called Geneva, which is made from Denmark. It is very safe, and I hope that we can prepare with that medication also. And it has about 85% effectiveness against monkeypox. So it's not a situation like COVID-19.
Right, which is why the WHO says it can be contained then. Mm-hmm. Professor Yu, there have also been alarming cases of pediatric hepatitis of unknown cause, I understand, mostly in the UK and the US. What does the phrase unknown cause mean here?
Unknown means still we don't know yet till now. So when I was the student in medical college, we learned about the special case is the non-hepatitis B, non-hepatitis C. Now we can call hepatitis A. So it was in the text, in my textbook of the medicine. So there are some cases non-B, non-C, but it's very fast, and the liver enzyme is getting higher, catching the yellow, we can call jaundice, and get a fever. Sometimes elderly people can die who need a liver transplantations to save their life. Very similar cases. But now, probably our dear watching the Arirang, you will be surprised. You know, our technologies can detect hepatitis A, B, C, D, E, G. So it's not from the song of the ABC. So yes, we recognize one by one. But unknown means still we don't know what exactly. So some special health authorities say adenovirus 14F, the variant can cause. Yes, can be, But some other health authority and special say, so it's impossible because adenovirus is like air. So everybody catch it. So unknown means, yes, still we don't know. But treatment for acute hepatitis is quite similar. So that's why I like to recommend it, because now it's a borderline is open. So the parents want to take their children to be overseas trip for especially the summer vacation. Probably also you have a planning some. So that time, if your kids has some symptom, high fever suddenly, and skin color the change, and keeps throwing up and feeling of the bloating of stomach, it can be symptom of acute hepatitis. That moment, properly bring to the hospital to handle it would be good. Anyway, so hepatitis A vaccination is still available in Korea. Hepatitis B also is mandatory for all Koreans. So even who are staying in Korea, different nationalities, please check your vaccine record about hepatitis A and B, and then watching your condition.
Right, I see. And staying with hepatitis among children then, Professor Kim, what more can you tell us about the treatment options available?
Well, if you have a specific pathogen, sometimes we have a specific drug for that kind of infection. Actually, there are some sporadic cases with unknown etiology among pediatric hepatitis. In that case, usually they just go away with supportive therapy, and we let them admit to the hospital, let them rest, and we discontinue any drugs or anything that might be harmful for the liver. And we give a intravenous nutrition and just let the liver rest. And usually they subside. But if the hepatitis occurs as a group or as an outbreak, then it's a concern, and we have to find out what is causing this. And in April, there are some reports that it might happen because of adenovirus, but this hepatitis occurring in UK, we don't know the pathogen yet. But anyway, if it happens sporadically, usually the liver enzyme drops with this kind of supportive therapy. If it doesn't decrease, or if you have jaundice together with this elevated liver enzymes, then that's the time urgent treatment might be needed, as Professor Yu mentioned, and the patient might have to be transferred to tertiary medical institutions.
I see. All right, Professor Kim, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts today. And Professor Yu, thank you very much for your insights. K-pop boy band, BTS that is, was at the White House this past Tuesday as part of broader efforts to celebrate diversity and censure discrimination, which has reportedly led to a frightening surge in racially motivated violence over in the US. Our Song Yoo-jin reports.
K-pop superstars BTS visited the White House on Tuesday to meet U.S. President Joe Biden and discuss ways to combat anti-Asian hate crimes. Before their closed-door meeting with the president, the group attended a White House press briefing. The briefing room was packed with more journalists than usual, and more than 230,000 viewers had joined the White House's live stream before the event had even begun.
So today, on the final day of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, I'm excited to welcome some special guests to the briefing room today, pop phenoms BTS.
Taking turns on the podium, BTS started by thanking the White House and the president for the invitation.
And hi, we're BTS, and it is a great honor to be invited to the White House today to discuss the important issues of anti-Asian hate crimes, Asian inclusion, and diversity.
The group members moved on to stress the importance of diversity and tackling crimes targeting Asians.
Crimes including Asian American hate crimes. To put a stop to this and support this cause, we'd like to take this opportunity to speak out on the matter once again.
It's not wrong to be different. Equality begins when we open up and embrace all of our differences.
The group's visit to the White House comes as anti-Asian hate crimes have seen a significant surge in the U.S. A report by the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism showed that the number of such crimes last year jumped 339% from the year before. 송유진, Arirang News.
Up next, we explore the remarkable popularity of cafes here in South Korea among the younger generation. Not only are they regular patrons to these coffee places, quite a few of them also own their own establishments. Our Ishihu has more.
On average, South Koreans drink 353 cups of coffee a year. That's nearly 3 times the global average. South Korea boasts over 70,000 cafes, which is more than the number of convenience stores in the country. And while the pandemic has hurt many industries, cafes have been booming. In fact, in 2020, the country imported a record 176,000 tons of coffee, up 5.4% from the previous year. And in January 2021, the number of cafes had grown by 15% compared to the same month the year before. A significant number of the new cafes were opened by the so-called MZ generation, those born between roughly 1981 and 2005. A cafe owner who belongs to this generation shared why he thinks many of his peers dream of opening cafes.
Low barriers to enter the market, the fact that you can decorate your own space and develop your own recipes and get immediate feedback from customers, as well as personal satisfaction, I think are the reasons.
According to a survey conducted in 2020, over 50% of the MZ generation visit cafes more than once a week.
I think for Korean people, it's a place where people can find rest for a moment.
Studying at cafes is less stressful and more fun than in rigid environments like at home or school.
Experts say that for young people, cafes provide a place of independence.
For the MZ generation, their own space within the house is very limited and their friends also have no space of their own. So to maintain social relationships, talk to each other, and to do activities independently, they have to go outside the house. And the closest place they can access their own space are cafes.
Cafes are more than just a place to buy coffee, especially for young South Koreans. 이시후, Arirang News.
And Seoul City will host an event this weekend to celebrate 60 years of diplomatic ties between South Korea and Colombia. The event takes place Sunday at the Tuksam Hangang Park. Korean and Colombian dancers will perform traditional Colombian dances at the event. Colombian musicians will also perform. A graffiti art display depicting the friendly bilateral relationship will also be on display. The city of Seoul has 2 sister cities in Colombia, its capital, Bogota, and Medellin. Last year, the president of Colombia visited South Korea and was named an honorary citizen of Seoul. In line with the global initiative aimed at easing our carbon footprints, a state-funded research center here has devised its own green method of converting ammonia into hydrogen. Our Cho Sung-min explains.
Hydrogen energy is clean and produces zero carbon emissions when used as a primary energy source. But one of the main hurdles preventing countries from going all in on hydrogen is that while some efforts have been successful, the world hasn't figured out ways to completely eliminate carbon when actually producing the hydrogen itself. South Korea currently collects most of its hydrogen by processing oil or other natural gases, which creates carbon gas. To be more eco-friendly, a team of local scientists has used ammonia to create hydrogen without emitting any carbon gas. They exposed ammonia to a special catalyst that's heated up to 650 degrees Celsius. It created a chemical reaction, and as a result, they were able to acquire a type of gas comprised of 99.97% hydrogen. The only emissions are a microscopic amount of ammonia gas, which the team says can be recycled to create additional hydrogen.
We're using a metal catalyst with high thermal conductivity. It shows high efficiency because it uses less fuel.
The new technology also allows South Korea to import carbon-free hydrogen at a much cheaper cost. While transporting hydrogen requires storing it in tanks after liquefying it at minus 250 degrees Celsius, now it can be turned into ammonia instead, which can be stored in tanks at only minus 33 degrees Celsius.
Renewable energy is quite affordable in several other countries. We can produce green hydrogen in those places, and using ammonia is the most achievable way to liquefy hydrogen.
The team plans to build a facility that uses this technology to produce at least 2 tons of hydrogen per day in the southeastern city of Ulsan by the second half of next year. And industry experts believe the technology can be the backbone for the nation's green energy initiative for years to come. 조성민, 아리랑 뉴스.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. An earthquake in China's southwestern province of Sichuan has killed at least 4 people and injured 14 others. The 6.1 magnitude earthquake hit Lushan County in Ya'an City on Wednesday at 5 p.m. local time. Local authorities also reported that another earthquake measuring at 4.5 rattled neighboring Baosheng County. Officials said over 1,400 firefighters have been dispatched to affected areas, with damage to homes reported in Lushan County. Following the 2 quakes, China's Railway Authority halted train services in the area. Denmark will join the EU's common defence policy after Danes voted on Wednesday in favour of joining. According to an exit poll by Danish outlet TV2 on Wednesday, 66.6% were in favour of ending the country's 30-year-old opt-out. The referendum is the latest example of a European country seeking closer defence links with allies in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Abandoning the opt-out will mean that Danish officials can participate in EU defence topic discussions, and Danish forces can also take part in EU military operations. On Ukraine's Children's Day on Wednesday, 8 school buses with empty seats parked in Lviv's central square to serve as a reminder of the 243 children killed since Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24th. Some of the seats were filled with stuffed toys and children's name tags. Kyiv has accused Moscow of atrocities against civilians during its invasion, saying on Tuesday that it has identified more than 600 Russian war crime suspects and started prosecuting roughly 80 of them. Russia, meanwhile, has denied targeting civilians and has instead accused Kyiv of staging war crimes to smear its forces. A new sport that mixes elements of tennis, badminton, and ping pong is fast gaining popularity in the United States. Called pickleball, the sport started in 1965 in Washington state when 3 dads created a game the whole family could play. They named the sport after one of their dogs, Pickles. Figures show that the US alone has 4.8 million active players, double from just a few years ago. A key selling point of pickleball is its low cost and ease of playing, as 4 courts can fit in the same space as 1 tennis court. It only requires a net, a paddle, and a perforated plastic ball. According to USA Pickleball, the sport is also getting younger, with growth among players under 55 skyrocketing. 3 young white lions have found a new home at Venezuela's Caricuao Zoo. Originally from South Africa, the lions arrived last week from a zoo in the Czech Republic and are part of efforts to improve zoos and parks across the South American country. The trio is comprised of 1 female and 2 males. They are all roughly 2 years old and each weigh 120 kilograms. The lions will remain in a quarantine facility at the zoo in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, until the end of June, and will then be relocated to a bigger enclosure where tourists can see them. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good Thursday afternoon. It was a bit chilly in the morning, but things turned around. On checking today's high temperatures, it's just as hot as yesterday. So highs will be above 30 degrees in most southern regions, but things will cool down rapidly in the evening, so factor in the wide gaps in readings and dress accordingly. Well, thanks to a high-pressure system, it will be sunny and the air quality will be good. But be mindful of the high UV index and ozone level. And as you can see, the UV index is very high across the country. So wear sunscreen and bring your sunglasses or parasol. Well, as it keeps getting drier and drier every day, dire wildfire conditions are likely to continue with an expanded dry weather advisory, and Arirang is already fighting a blaze. So please be extra careful not to cause any additional wildfire damage. While tomorrow, Seoul is going to see 32 degrees, marking the capital's hottest day of this year so far. And there's a rain in the forecast in Gyeonggi-do next week. Now let's take a look at the worldwide weather conditions.
And those are the latest headlines at this hour. We'll be back with more coverage tomorrow, so join us then.